This is love in my brain. This is the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass series, celebrating over 25 years of drum and bass in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along. It is the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass podcast, and joining me today is certified New Zealand Drum and Bass royalty. It's MC Tali. How you going, mate?
Kia ora, mate. Very good. Nice to be here.
So, level 4 lockdown, buddy. How's it been treating you?
Up and down. I've been really productive because I've actually had a lot of work to do. I'm kind of branching out now into composing for film and television, and I've had a couple of projects that I've been commissioned to do. So that's been really exciting, but it's just really exhausting. I don't know, because I don't have anything else to do. I'm just sat here in the studio for hours and hours working. And then when I finally get up to stretch my legs and rub my eyes, I'm like, God, I'm absolutely exhausted. So I'm trying not to burn out even though I'm in lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been saying that as well. It's like this one's it's hitting a bit different this time around. It's like, holy shit, we're back here again. We kind of thought we were out of the woods, and here we are again. But I mean, everyone that I know has kind of been quite productive and off kind of trying to think about the next step in their careers and all that sort of shit. So I guess it's given people a little bit of time to sort of reflect on where they're at and all that as well.
I think for me as well, last lockdown, I really was focusing on sort of my own stuff and improving my skills on Logic, for example. And I actually produced a large number of tracks from that lockdown. This lockdown, it's actually been quite good to have this exterior work to focus on because I feel less motivated to focus on my own shit, So having these other things to sort of look at is been really, really helpful, particularly for my mental health. And just trying to get out of the house and go for a walk around the block and down to the beach and do yoga and stuff as well. Keep my physical self feeling good as well.
Yeah, I've seen your stories coming up and I'm like, oh, I know exactly where you are, that little beach down there by your house. It's lovely down there, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I feel like I've neglected social media somewhat, but I just don't really have anything to say. And I'm not one of those people who just post shit for the sake of it all the time. Sometimes I do, but yeah.
I feel you on that. I think the older we get maybe might be part of it as well, you know what I
mean? Maybe, but I'm also quite a private person, and I've always been told that a large reason why I don't have heaps and heaps of followers is my social engagement's really lame, but that's just because I don't want to let people know what I'm eating for breakfast, and I don't necessarily want people to know where I am all of the time.
There's a whole generation of people who have grown up oversharing, and it's kind of weird, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Hey, well, speaking of sharing, let's share a story of the history of New Zealand drum and bass, because your story is one of the greatest out of all the producers, out of all the MCs, out of anyone who's come from New Zealand drum and bass. Your story, I mean, a lot of people would have got a really great insight into what your background is and your history and everything that you've achieved last year through your documentary. But let's take it right back to where you first found your passion for A, music, and then B, drum and bass.
Okay. Cool. Well, I mean, my passion for music, I guess, was just a young age. My parents loved music. I mean, I'd say their taste in music was slightly questionable, but I did get a lot of good loves out of what they used to play me, like Fleetwood Mac and Hot Chocolate. But as a kid, I just loved music, and my mum would always be like, she's going to be a musician, and always really fostered and encouraged my love of music and my love of dancing. And so from a young age, I was doing piano lessons and singing lessons and dancing lessons. And then as I got older and started going out with my fake ID to the one club in New Plymouth that we could get into, it was actually really cool. It was this place called The Mill, and upstairs they used to have live bands, and downstairs they used to have a DJ. And the DJ was great. He would would play such a selection of music. You know, I would hear Beastie Boys down there, Rage Against the Machine. I heard De La Soul, and obviously pop music too. But the lot of the DJs that played there prided themselves on playing a lot of cool shit. And I used to go surfing in Wakura and stay at my brother's house. There's a beautiful beach there, and he and his flatmates had the most extensive CD collection. So my knowledge and love of different genres really grew from there. Smashing Pumpkins and Red Hot Chili Peppers to Public Enemy, you know, like, and
Just all that good shit.
yeah, but just like multi genres, like, you know. And so I guess I kind of like fluctuated between what I liked, like especially going to things like the Big Day Out. When I discovered live concerts and going to my first live show, which I think was U2, I got on a bus in New Plymouth and came up to Auckland for that, and then going to Pearl Jam when I was at uni, and then Bjork and Smashing Pumpkins. Like every live show I saw, I was like, I need to be in the music industry. I love this.
Was that the U2 Zoo TV tour where they had the massive screens and they'd call up the White House and all that sort of shit?
No, it was the one where they had the two. It was Zoo. Was it Zoo? Where they had two cars suspended from cranes, and these two cars shook and moved in time to the music. They were like full real cars, you know, suspended. And they did that song Lemon. She's a lemon.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they were supported by Big Audio Dynamite, who I also really
That's
love.
right. So that tour is the very first time I ever saw a DJ play, and that DJ was Greg Churchill. Greg Churchill was playing in Lancaster Park right before Paul Oakenfold.
Right.
Then Paul Oakenfold played, and then Big Audio Dynamite came on, and then U2 came on.
Amazing.
It was incredible, man. It was like, okay, I want to be a DJ. I was like, who's this guy who's playing this sick music? I recognise him from the Worcester Bar. That's Greg Churchill. Oh my God, he's supporting U2.
I wonder if they played. They would have done the Auckland show too, maybe. But I didn't get there in time for them. I got there literally right at the start of Big Audio Dynamite. Who we loved, you know, we loved their music in high school. So I guess going to these live shows and then going to the Big Day Out and seeing like such a myriad of music. But the Big Day Out was a real eye-opener for me, because when I lived in Wellington and was at university, a lot of my friends and I would go out, and it would always be those typical bars, student bars, where everyone's dancing around their fucking handbag in the middle of the dance floor. And it's just about getting with guys and drinking beer, and just a culture that just was not appealing to me. I just did not
It sounds
enjoy
like the Nacky vibe though, right?
No, but that was Wellington.
Oh, that was Welly.
Yeah. So, you know, there was these places called like the Loaded Hog and St. John's that like my friends wanted to go to, and I hated those places. They felt like meat markets. I hated being objectified. I didn't like the music. I thought the culture around the whole thing, like the fighting and just getting wasted, it was awful. So I used to leave, go off by myself down to like Cuba Street and go to some weird little obscure like hip hop jazz night that was happening, or some like punk bar, and just go by myself a lot of the time and just dance and sometimes make friends and sometimes not, because I'm also kind of an introvert as well. Like I take a little bit to warm up to people. So I would go to those nights, and I knew that I just loved music. And then when I moved down to Christchurch to go to the National Academy of Singing and Dramatic Arts, I went to my first Big Day Out. So I hitchhiked all the way from Christchurch with my boyfriend at the time, Sam Bryden. Remember Sammy?
Big up Sammy. Sammy's one of my dearest mates. So yeah, I do remember Sammy.
Of course, yeah. So we hitchhiked all the way up to Auckland to go to the Big Day Out, and he really loved rock music, but I was getting into electronic music, because in Wellington I used to go to this club called Tato, and Clinton Smiley would be DJing, and I didn't know what I was listening to. I didn't know what the genre of music was. I just liked the fact that it made me dance, and I really enjoyed it. And I went to the N-Train Festival, which was in Cannon Downs and near Nelson. That again was really eye-opening, but it was a lot of trance music. So I was kind of like, oh, I think I like the rave music scene. I'm just not sure, because I guess I hadn't found the right music yet, right?
Yeah, N-Train's kind of a could be perceived as a dodgy introduction to dance music as well. You know, it's very hippie. It's very
hippie, psytrance. You
yes,
know,
yeah.
So anyway, going to the big day out, Sam really wanted to see a lot of these rock bands, but I'd heard heaps about this band called Prodigy, and I really wanted to see them, and it got to the point where they started, and we were down in the mosh pit, and the place was going crazy, and I sort of was like, I've got to go in to Sam, because he was sort of standing back like, what is this? And I just threw myself into the crowd and was raving, jumping up and down to this, you know, early form of breakbeat, I guess. And next thing I turn around and he's right behind me with this massive smile on his face going, this is fucking wicked. I was like, I told you. I told you. I was like, you know, you dissing me in electronic music, this is the one. So after that, I really, you know, started to explore more breakbeat, and then from there it was a natural progression into drum and bass and going to, you know, the Ministry and the all genre raves that we used to have down in Christchurch. And I just remember staying until the end one night, because remember how they used to be like it was like house at the start and then trance in the middle, and then they'd finish off with drum and bass?
Yeah, they'd always have drum and basses like relegated to the early morning sets or the sunrise sets or something like that. But it kind of worked back then as well, because the music that was coming out was quite atmospheric. It was a lot of LTJ Bookham, good looking and looking good, and
Faux Tech,
all that kind of stuff. Faux Tech, exactly. Niti and Ichiru had just dropped around that era.
Yeah. And so
I actually said to Tiki the other day as well, I was like, you know, there is a big difference between, you know, other scenes outside of Christchurch, because Christchurch was, you wouldn't get strictly, early on, you wouldn't get strictly drum and bass nights. You'd get a mixture. You'd get trance, you'd get house, you'd get hip hop, you'd get drum and bass. Yeah, totally. Whereas other scenes had their own kind of club nights that had started up. You know, Wellington, Studio 9, and then Auckland had the breaks and everything like that. You know, so Christchurch lagged behind a little bit on having its own weekly night, but I think once we all started coming together and putting on parties, that changed very fast, you know.
But I think that's what was so great about it, because you did get this exposure to loads of different forms. And so I think it created this really beautiful community of people. Later on, I feel like those communities became slightly more insular and segregated in a way. But
everyone fractured off and did their own thing. You know?
But those of us that were putting on parties or immersed in the scene, like myself and Moses at Scientific and James Meharry, or Aragorn and Jeff, who were doing the Heaven Nights, or the guys who were doing the nights at Hybrid, you know, we all supported each other's nights, and that was because we started out raving all together at these multi-genre nights.
Exactly. You knew everyone on a first name basis. Within like a 1,200 person rave, that was pretty much the entire community, but you knew pretty much everyone by first name, you know what I mean? And we had places like Java where we'd all hang out and meet before the gigs and all that sort of shit. It was very much like...
Go for pizza at Winniebago's.
Yes, big melting pot of different kinds of people. Like, I remember sort of like we'd group people, especially all of us drum and bass boys. We'd be like, oh, they're the trance Nazis. Oh, they're the house bunnies. Oh, you know, it's like... But at the end of the day, we all end up raving together in the middle of a paddock or in a gigantic freaking warehouse-sized club called the Ministry, which to us was Mecca, you know, especially for drum and bass in Christchurch.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right. Like, there were definitely people where, you know, I'd be like, oh, she's more like a house girl kind of thing. But in saying that, you know, like on a Friday night, me and my best friends would cover ourselves in diamantes, tight little dresses, put our heels on, and we'd go up to Heaven and dance to house music. And then the next night, we'd put on our Nikes and our urchin pants, and we'd go and dance to drum and bass at bass.
Yeah.
Club bass.
I actually saw that photo you put up yesterday that you posted on your story of you and Matt in the park. It looked like the morning after a rave. It didn't even look like it was pre-raving. It looked like it was the morning after a rave.
It wasn't pre-morning. It wasn't anything to do with any rave. That's just me and Matt rocking our normal clothes that we wore, going down to... Because, you know, you don't just dress like a raver for the rave, you know, like this is the thing. The music created all these offshoots of fashion brands as well. Like Christchurch had so many fashion brands that were centered around rave music. We were the best dressed kids in the land.
Exactly. Well, Tiki brought this up in his podcast. He was like, you know what, man, I remember one of my fondest memories about those days was like the girls in the scene. They used to like for weeks prepare ahead, plan out their outfits, create the outfits themselves, and then go to the raves. You know what I mean? It was a big production for the wahine in Christchurch drum and bass and dance scene in general, because everyone put a lot of effort in. They had their own style, and then you'd see the next range of urchin stuff like Claire's stuff coming out, and like
We had Lumiere and Subvert.
exactly. Yeah, it's mad. Yeah, it's mad. Christchurch dance music culture and fashion were hand in hand from the start.
I honestly think we were the best dressed kids in the land, you know, like we would all look so put together. And
Yeah.
so that photo that you saw of Matt and I, that was just us in our normal clothes. We were down at Sydenham Park watching Joe Moses doing graffiti for the council.
Yep. I remember that. That's around the time that I moved down there, actually.
Was it? I thought you'd gone
yeah.
by then.
I had moved back down, so I had like 2 or 3 missions up to Auckland to do, you know, various drum and bass stuff, but then I'd come back down for snowboarding every winter. So I'd be living above Liquor Lounge, and that's when we started like the Point Blank Sunday night.
That's where I first met you.
Yeah, and we moved that to bass and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's funny because we weren't actually friends back then. You know,
We
it was
were
kind
not.
of like there was very, very different scenes. We us drum and bass lads, like our group, and then there was your group. But you know, we didn't hate each other. We all hung out. It was all like friends and shit. But we just did our own things and like.
You guys were just rude. You were mean and disrespectful.
We were assholes. Yeah, we were assholes, and you know, I think that's that definitely it just never sat well with me, you know what I mean? Like I always look back at that and I was like, I was a prick. I was an absolute asshole. So were all of my friends. We were rude, we were obnoxious, we were very drum and bass Nazis, you know, like everything else.
Purist. You were purists.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Chin strokers. We were the original chin strokers, I think.
Yeah.
But
And I think that's what was so hard for me, because I was friends with a lot of these younger girls, a lot of them who you guys had relationships with, various relationships with. I never liked the way that you guys, you know, and now we're friends and now you acknowledge what you like. And when you're young, you are stupid and you say dumb things, you know, like no one's
absolutely.
perfect.
The arrogance.
The arrogance and the way that we as women were sort of looked down upon and treated, I think really was part of what set the fire in my belly to prove. You guys kind of made me feel like I needed to prove to all you motherfuckers that we as women could do something in drum and bass. You know, there was like me and Beeline, Belinda, a great DJ who also got treated really badly too.
I lived with Belinda. Belinda was my dear friend, so I kind of like I always had Bee's back, and I love her bits
you did.
to this day.
You
know?
did.
But other people in general who remain nameless, but you know, like there was some terrible treatment.
Still records from her and shit, and also
from that point onwards, I kind of made it my mission to make sure that Beeline was included, because I was like, it's not okay. She's awesome. She's fucking sick on the decks, and I think a lot of people were more threatened by her presence behind the decks. Because fuck me, there's something very powerful about a strong wahine playing fucking big beats. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But this is what I'm saying. So even though I really hated seeing my friends get treated really badly, and I used to be like, come on, you need to like stick up for yourself. And I think I created like this little crew of like, we were quite gobby because we had to stand up for ourselves because there was so much negativity aimed towards us as women in drum and bass. And that part of that was what made me think, I want to be something in this scene. I want to show these guys. So even though at the time, because I was never anybody's fool and nobody ever really, anytime anyone gave me lip, I gave it back. And I remember our good friend Wizard always being like, you always stood up for yourself, Tali. You always were like, nah, I'm not having that, you know.
Yeah.
But even though that was that, I also have to thank you for that in a way, because that's what really made me be like, right. You know, and when I decided to be an MC, and Moses, my partner at the time, was like, oh, I don't know about this, you know, I think because he didn't want me to embarrass him, you know, there was a big part of it.
That was probably the main part of it.
Yeah. But he also believed in me, and he could see that I was talented, and he was like, okay, if you're going to do this, it's not enough to be good, you're going to have to be great, you know. So So there was
Which
that.
is that's amazing advice from a partner who is also just trying to like cut his teeth in drum and bass. You know what I mean? Mo came from the Dunedin scene, and he used to bring myself and MC Green down, and Wizard would be down
Hip-hop.
there
He started
as well.
with hip-hop, didn't he? With him
Yeah,
and Shan.
exactly. Yeah, DJ Shan. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Shout out Shan. Shout out Moses. Obviously, I've touched on this before, but for the people out there who are listening, Moses is actually Need for Mirrors, one of New Zealand's most prolific producers, based in London, putting on great nights and all that sort of stuff. You'll hear us talking about him throughout the podcast, and also I do hope to have him on to talk about his career, because it has been exceptional. But back to you. This era, this was when drum and bass really started evolving into that really forward-thinking sound, and we used to get those shows coming through the ministry. Obviously, you guys at Scientific were more prolific in bringing out your style. You had very Bristol-y kind of tastes and all that sort of stuff.
V recordings and
full
Shy
cycle,
effects.
DJ Bailey.
Yeah.
And, just whereas, the Subtronics was a completely different sort of sound and brand. So it was awesome to have a promotion event company in Christchurch that was doing stuff that wasn't just the Subtronic sound.
That was the thing.
So,
That was the thing. We when Moses was like, I want to put on parties, he was like, I used to do parties in Dunedin and I want to do parties in Christchurch. And, the thing about Joe is that he's an excellent businessman. Him and James Meharry, shout outs to Pylon.
Yep. Shout out Pylon.
The two of them used to clash a lot. Okay, they were totally different personalities, but what they did have in common was that they were both deeply ambitious, both really passionate about the music, and they both really wanted to create a change and create something that was Christchurch or at least South Island specific, because we'd get a lot of the same people coming through time and again, because Subtronics would bring through the same old people, not the same old people like they were boring, but you know what I mean? Like we wanted to see new faces. It was like, how do we do this? And I was a singer-songwriter at the time, playing my piano around Christchurch, playing in the Arts Centre, playing at Java, the Honey Pot, all these different places.
I remember actually seeing you on a grand piano in the middle of Christchurch Mall, in Cashel Street Mall.
Yeah.
One afternoon, I was like, "Whoa, that's Tali.
That's
what
the
the
girl.
fuck?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I was, a trained singer, and so I thought, I think people thought that I was going to be like a pop singer or something, but I always knew that I wanted to do something different. And my mother entered me into this television program called Showcase, and I didn't want to do it because I was worried it was going to ruin my street cred. I just started getting into drum and bass and raving, and I was like, no, it's not cool. And again, I don't think Moses wanted me to do it either, because I think he was like, again, oh God, is this going to embarrass me type thing. But the people on the show were like, look, you can play an original if you want to. You don't have to do a cover or anything. And my mother just begged me to do the show. So anyway, long story short, I did the show. I won the semi-final. I won I won my heat, I won the semi-final, and then I got third overall in the grand final. And I actually won a trip to, I think it was to Hong Kong. However, when I went to the travel agent and spoke to the travel agent, I was like, look, I don't really want to go to Hong Kong. I want to go to London. Because that's the home of drum and bass, I want to go there. Yeah. And I think the travel agents were like, well, we saw you on the show and we thought you should have won, and we're happy to just cover that extra, the additional, to get you to London.
How good.
So I don't know how they did it, but I can't imagine that it was that much more expensive actually. But they ended up getting me and Moses to London, and from there we did our drum and bass pilgrimage. We went to Metalheads, we went to Movements, we went on the train to Bristol and went and visited the guys who ran Knowledge Magazine, Colin and Rachel. We popped down to Full Cycle. Yeah, I met Crust there. It was super exciting, and the thing that we really did was go around and see record labels and go to these nights and just hustle and make connections. Like, we met Bailey at Metalheads and we were like, we're the people that have been emailing you from New Zealand. We want to bring you out. Had a proper talk with him. Moses really put in the groundwork. He probably did, really take advantage of the fact that I got us to London in a way at the time that I was a bit like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is my trip. You know? We're going to Paris for 3 days. And he kind of took over in the way that he tended to. But again, I don't begrudge him because we had the most insane time. I met some incredible people that I'm still friends with now. And from that, we were able to come back to Aotearoa, start Scientific and have the promoters and the agents over there say, okay, these are credible people. They've made the effort to come, you know? So that's how we started.
I remember having this ultimate feeling of envy when you guys took off. I think you guys were gone for like a month or so.
No, it was 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks.
I was at 2 weeks. I remember having this massive green envy. I was like, oh, I really want to go to look, because by this stage I think was like, what, 98, 99? I had not been to London yet, you know. We'd only just started producing music and all that sort of shit. So you guys were already over there doing the hard mahi and laying the groundwork for New Zealanders. Like obviously like 48 Sonic and Jeff Pressure used to go over to London quite a bit to stock up on dubs and all that sort of shit. But you guys were the first crew outside of them lot to head over to London and actually put in the groundwork to sort of bring people out to Christchurch, which really fucking made a difference.
It completely changed the city scene, you know, like having a Christchurch promotions company put on a show in Christchurch was really exciting, not just for us, but for all the locals. People had a sense of ownership when it came to the scientific shows that they didn't have with Subtronics because they were an Auckland-based company. So from there, you know, we started having all these DJs play and putting on all these nights, and I'd expressed an interest in MCing because, you know, from a young age I'd loved hip hop music and I'd loved lyrics and really just discovered the power of language and the power of words and the power of having a platform where you can say something. And I think a lot of that early hip hop that I listened to, like Public Enemy and NWA as well, and De La Soul and Talib Kweli, just the different ways that people use their platform. Like there was people like Snoop Dogg who were mean rappers but talked a lot of shit, and then there were people like Public Enemy who actually said something. And I was like,
it was messages.
Yeah, I was like, I want to do that, but I didn't know how to because like hip hop was not really a scene I felt that comfortable in. So the first time...
And drum and bass's emceeing is very, very different to hip-hop as well. It's very much a toasting reggae, ragga kind of based style of emceeing.
Definitely
at the very
back then,
you know?
For sure. And I remember the first time, you know, remember when we used to get the One in the Jungle tapes sent over from who sent those tapes?
So I'm sure it was Pylon. One of Pylon's people had a friend living over there. There was also there was a guy called Matt Barron who lived in Christchurch who ended up, he was DJ Silencer, played drum and bass, but then ended up... He was
the guy that I first ever heard play drum and bass.
Yes, right. Well, he ended up linking up with Ed Rush and Optical, and him and his partner Gemma moved over to London and became the designers for Virus Recordings.
Right, so that's where we used to get all these One in the Jungle tapes
so
from.
he was sending back lots of tapes and everything like that, yeah.
And I remember saying to Moses, please can I borrow the tape? Please can I listen to it? It's got Ronnie Sizer on it. Please, please. And he'd be like, okay, but you're not allowed to give this to any of your mates and you're not allowed to record it. You know, like there was such a hierarchy around who was allowed to listen to the tapes.
Oh, there was.
It
Absolutely.
was crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was the same when we used to record the gigs. It was like, okay, cool, we're recording this gig, but A, we weren't supposed to record it. B, it's full of dubs, so it can't get around. But within 2 weeks, there is a tape playing in everyone's house. You know what I mean?
100%. And I love that. I love that because...
Mate, that bootleg culture was the backbone of the scene, I'm not going to lie, because like I've said in my podcast, it's like... a tune would come out, a tune would be made, you'd hear it on a tape, and then it would take up anywhere between 6 months and 2 years to come out. But during that time, these tunes had developed such a mystique and such a folklorish nature around it, and the producers as well, because we had no access to them, you know what I mean? So in your mind's eye, you had to imagine what it was like in the studio when they're making these tunes and all that, you know. It was really like, it just created such a hype around these DJs coming out and us getting to hear those tunes on a big system, you know.
Yeah, and like part of when we went to London, you know, a really big part of that for Joe, for Moses, was that he wanted to get dub plates cut, and he got these dats from people like Bailey, and I don't know who gave him this tunes, but we went and we got, I know, Splash, Daz from Splash. He gave us a whole bunch of dats that we went and got cut at Music House. So I remember we sat in the queue, and there was dudes there from South London, there was dudes there from Germany, there was us. We'd come the furthest, obviously. And I remember I had to go out and find Joe and I a sandwich from somewhere because we sat in that queue for like 3 or 4 hours, and he was like, I can't lose my place in the queue, you have to go get us lunch.
It's the original Music House down Eden Grove, right? That little tin shack down that little long alleyway.
Yeah, with the sliding door. And I remember we were sitting in there, and these two massive dudes came in and like jumped in ahead of us, and I was like, those guys pushed in. And Moses was like, yo, that's Mappy Swift. And the other guys, I think it was like Digital or something, he's like, they are totally able to jump the queue. I was like, oh shit, okay. But yeah, I think the whole thing about getting those mixtapes and getting the dub plates cut and coming back and playing them was that we knew we were on the precipice of something really exciting and really special.
Absolutely.
That was taking over our country, and it wasn't taking over our country in a real commercial sense like drum and bass does now. It was so underground, and we knew we were part of something special, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, just thinking about it right now, you just hearing you say that, it's just giving me goosebumps because
Same.
Fuck me days, mate. Like just the absolute mahi that went into creating the scene, you know what I mean? Like pilgrimages to London to go and cut dub plates, to lay the groundwork and all that sort of shit. My first trips to London, my very first trip to London, I bumped into you and Moses.
At Fabric, wasn't it?
No, it was at the Velvet Room at Swerve on a Sunday night.
Were you there?
Yeah, mate,
Shit.
I was there. It was me, you, Mo was there. I went down with Joe and Zara from Metalheads. They were looking after me.
Were we friendly?
Yeah,
I can't even remember.
Oh, no, I think it was more of a, what are you doing here? But no, man, it was fucking amazing. You know, Goldie was playing, Doc Scott had just finished playing, Goldie was playing.
Was
Groove
this
Riders
after
waiting.
I'd moved there? Was this after
Yeah,
I'd moved there?
I think you'd moved there, yeah. So we
Yeah,
skipped
yeah.
a few years there, but
Yeah.
yeah. But I want to talk about one of my first memories of seeing you MC over an international artist. I'd brought out Bad Company to New Zealand, and they got side booked to play New Beginnings. And I remember
Yes.
DJ Fresh had heard about you, and he asked me, so I introduced you guys, and next thing you know, you're MCing with them on their set, and that was the first time I'd ever see you properly unleash, and I was like, holy shit, she's got a point to prove here, this is going to be fucking sick. And
That was
fire.
one of the scariest things ever. Like, for starters, I couldn't believe that you were asking me to MC for your acts, because obviously we had this notorious relationship where we didn't really get on. But to be honest, we didn't really get on because you and Joe didn't really get on. I was just,
Yeah,
there.
and even then, Mo and I had originally got on. I just thought he was weird, and he always rubbed people up the wrong way. But that was just Mo's
Yeah.
style, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it was never anything personal. But except for when, he did come back with a whole bunch of dub plates, and we were jealous as fuck, you know what I mean? But still, I never. The music for me, the music was a glue that sort of kept us all together, and it didn't matter about the politics at the end of the day because we were doing what we loved, and that was, very true of the Christchurch scene. Everyone who was involved in that scene was doing what they loved,
Yeah, so I couldn't believe that you had asked me to MC for Bad Company, but what was also really nerve-wracking, because they were like, you were like, they want an MC, and I was like, get Green to do it, because I just dropped a pill or something, like I'd taken some MDMA, and I was like, why doesn't Green do it? And you were like, nah, you've got to do it, they want you to do it. And I think that was you even acknowledging that you thought that I was a better MC.
It was, and Green had also smashed back a bottle of Hennessy by this stage, so we were out in that back porticom and shit was just getting real, so I was like, mate, it's got to be Tali. It's absolutely got to be Tali.
I spent the entire, do you know what? I have the recording on tape of that set in my closet.
I knew this one is kicking about still. Yeah, this is historic.
I still have
set.
it, but I do not listen to it because the first time I ever listened back to it, I cringed so hard. I was like, I can hear myself suppressing my high. My high is threatening to bubble over every 2 minutes, and I'm like, hold it down. So I can literally listen to that set, and I can be taken back into that body space of trying not to show that I was wasted. And I remember I was like, Fresh in Vegas, and they were like, no, not Fresh in Vegas, just, no, what was it? It it was Vegas and Maldini, was it?
Vegas and Maldini this time around, yeah I think.
And they were like, don't say Vegas and Maldini, just say Bad Company. And I was like, okay, sorry. I remember Maldini just like looking at me going, he's like, you're all good, sweetie, and like winked at me. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm in, this is good. They think I'm okay. And me and Maldini retained, to this day, such a special friendship. We have always been friends ever since then.
Jay's a fucking true champion of the scene, man. He's awesome.
I love that guy. I love him. Like, I've got all the time in the world.
Him and his partner, Sarah, who was one of the main agents at the time, I was in London and I just happened to be there. And he's like, bruv, what are you doing on Sunday night? I was like, not much. He's like, come over. I was like, awesome, sweet. I've been invited over to Jay Maldini's house on Sunday night. What are we going to do? Have a roast. I get there and he's like, sweet, bruv, can you grab that couch there? We're moving out. I was like... totally roped his mate from New Zealand into coming and helping him shift house from Shepherd Bush. I was like, what? There better be some fucking dub plates in this for me, buddy.
Oh, shout out to Bad Company, man. Like
shout out
even
Bad
when
Company,
I moved
man.
to London, like those dudes were always real good to me. Like Fresh, I remember Fresh, seeing Fresh at Velvet Rooms for the Swerve night, and him inviting a group of us back to his apartment for an after party, and we got there, and it was just, I remember falling asleep there and waking up and being like, oh my God, I'm in Fresh's studio and everyone's gone home, I need to go. And he got me a taxi. I was like, yo, bro, sorry, I'm out of here. And he's like, whoa, it's all good, chill out. You know, because I was so conscious of being taken seriously, I think. Always being taken seriously, always being professional. But that New Beginnings gig was definitely a change for me, for sure.
Yeah, I've got another really fond memory of you as well. It was when DJ Trace came down and played the first time at the Ministry, and it was the first time that we'd all got to hear Silverblade on a loud system. And I remember Silverblade coming into the mix. And
Is that one of your tunes?
No, Silverblade Dillinger, the one with the Vingala strings from Blade Runner.
I can't think how that goes.
It's got the vocals like ooh, ooh, ah, ah, dum, 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 da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
you got me.
it had the boomerang beats and everything like that. But anyway, this tune we'd all been waiting for, and it was on one of those tapes that we'd had floating around Christchurch. And I remember it coming in, and I don't know what was up, but I turned and looked, and you were to the right side of the stage by the speaker stacks, and you had tears coming down your face because it was a moment. It was a big moment. I was like, wow, she really likes this tune, doesn't she?
I don't remember that at all.
Yes, it's funny how different things stick in your mind at different events and all that sort of shit. It's always stuck with me.
I used to cry a lot at drum and bass gigs. The music just used to move me so much. But yeah, that silencer moment, the first time I ever heard a drum and bass track, like I'd probably heard lots of breakbeat. I'd been to see Ed Rush when he was playing breaks. I'd been to see Spring Hill Jack, like that kind of thing. And it was like he played the first opening track was Maintain, the Crust remix of Maintain.
Yes.
And there's all that.
Yes, the big washes.
And then, yeah.
5 minute drum build up.
Of mine. Just Morgan's voice like cutting through, and I was like, and she's slightly flat almost as well. Like she always sang slightly out of tune. No disrespect to Morgan, but it was always kind of slightly off key, but worked.
Yeah.
And I remember
think that's
being
probably
like,
because she was
what
trying to find a key and a melody within Crust's washes of different
Sound.
noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%, bro. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, let's talk about. Okay, let's fast forward a few years. You've made your name now. You're a drum and bass MC in New Zealand. You and Mo go your separate ways. You move over to Melbourne. Where are we, and what are we doing in Melbourne?
So towards the end of my relationship with Moses, we used to fight a lot, and we were more like business partners than boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, like we had our very clear roles. I used to write all the contracts. I used to write the blurbs for the shows, you know, because I had this English degree, which him and Pylon were like, right, that's your job. And so a lot of the flyers that you look back and read now, all that writing, I wrote that. Those were all
your blurbs.
Yeah, and like the reviews.
That was a fucking art form in itself, man. Writing those blurbs was an art form in itself. Jesus Christ.
How many times
can you use cutting edge or next level or forward thinking in a paragraph?
Yes. was like, I used to get the thesaurus out and be like, right, I have to find a different word for rolling or rumbling or, Anyway, so it was very much like a business relationship. And in the end, I was just like, no, I've had enough of this. So we broke up and we were apart for a few months. And I found that really difficult as well because it kind of was, like it had only been 2 years. I'd only had 2 years of being an MC in Christchurch and I couldn't go any further. Drum and bass was not a big genre then and there was really nowhere to go. No one was recording music or making music that I could sing on. So I was like, I have to go to the UK. That's where shit's happening. That's where I've got to be. But I was too scared to go straight to the UK and I was going by myself. So first of all, I went over to Melbourne just for the summer, just to see what was going on over there, and was hanging out with like Steve 1LC and Trooper and Ruxpin, those boys, and Dan B and Motive. Remember Dan Motive?
Yep.
Yeah, just hanging out with those dudes and kind of got in the scene quite quickly, and that was because we had also brought over Steve 1LC to play and Trooper, we'd brought him over to play as well. So we had this kind of friendship. They were very nice. They invited me into their scene. I hustled myself onto the mic when Ruxpin was playing. He was like, who's this little Kiwi girl trying to get on the mic? And we became real solid friends from that first night that I hustled the mic. And then I came back to New Zealand and was like, oh, yeah, that's right. While I was in Australia, I started seeing this Kiwi graffiti artist, and he was just like, "Don't go back to New Zealand. You should just stay in Australia. Like, you should just come back here and use this as your springboard before you go to the UK." And I was like, "Yeah, he's right." So I came back to New Zealand, packed up all my shit. I didn't even go to my graduation for Teachers College because I'd gone to Teachers College by that stage. I was done with studying. I was done with Christchurch. Just wanted to get the hell out. I went back to Melbourne, got a flat and lived there for the next 5 or 6 months and waitressed. And of course, notoriously got discovered while I was there by one of my greatest heroes, Ronnie Size.
Which was scenes.
Which
started
was
everything
which was the
that we're going to
platform.
talk about. Yeah. I mean, that's that right there. Obviously, last year you released a documentary that's celebrated 15 years since your signing to Full Cycle and releasing Lyric on My Lip, which, became arguably, I'm going to say this, it's probably the biggest drum and bass tune that came from any Kiwi artist besides Morning Light. And it propelled you into a whole different role, didn't it?
Yeah. So obviously I met Ronnie Size in Melbourne, MC'd in his ear at a gig backstage. For those people who want to know that story, you can
Go
just
and check
research
the
it.
documentary. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the story's pretty infamous now, but like 3 months after I met Ronnie, I moved to the UK and he had said to me, hit us up when you get here. But because I was still very insecure and scared, when I moved to the UK, I didn't hit them up straight away. I thought that maybe they didn't mean it. There's that whole sort of like tall poppy syndrome. We sometimes gaslight ourselves into not taking opportunities because
it's
we don't
it's
think
called
we're
imposter
worthy.
syndrome. You come from a place like New Zealand and sometimes you don't feel like you deserve these incredible opportunities that are coming up around the world. And it's like, I had imposter syndrome when I was around the world touring, and I couldn't believe that I was there doing what I did. But then sometimes I just kick myself in the nuts and be like, you know what? You're here for a freaking reason. You're supporting New Zealand. You're representing New Zealand. Go out there and do the very best you freaking can, So you definitely, once you had the ball in your mouth and you definitely ran with it, you know what I mean? And
Totally.
within 2 years of you being in the UK, you were the biggest female artist charting in drum and bass. And it was, not only that, I loved in your documentary how that you brought a crew of your favourite females, singers, vocalists along on the road with you. I thought that was just such a nice touch because it's like, you know what, man, like Tali's always been out there, representing for the girls. But then,
it was.
You actually, you put your money where your mouth is, and you do bring females along, and you are surrounded by a huge group of males, like the Full Cycle crew. There's a lot of fucking testosterone in that crew back in those days, So
I had to bring those girls with me, so initially I didn't hit up Ronnie for ages, and then eventually hooked up with them, and they were like, where have you been? And I'd kind of just said, I've just been biding my time. And they were like, well, now no time like the present, start getting on a train and going to Bristol. And first of all, I'm working with Sav, and he puts out a single, and then I did a tune with Di, and then I did something with Crust, and then I eventually got my meeting with Ronnie, and he was like, right, we're going to make a Tali album, but we're going to also do a band, and we're going to tour. And then, we did the record, and we put it out, and we had a couple of showcases with just me and DJs, and I was like, I want a female DJ, so I got DJ Daisy from the Roughneck Team crew in Bristol to be my DJ for a couple of showcases. And then when we got the band together, I said to Ronnie, look, I can't just travel with all bros, like I need backing singers, my tunes are full of harmonies, and I just needed a woman around me to be sane. So yeah, I just pulled in two of my best friends who could sing, Holly G and Zanaya. And we had the most incredible time. We toured Europe twice in the space of a year and a half, and we did the BBC and
I remember getting chills when scenes of you in was it like outside of like Saturday Night Live or whatever in the States, I was like, and then you guys on the radio in New York and shit, and then just playing the gigs, like when all that old footage that you geniusly collected and stored for all these years and managed to get transcoded to be in a documentary, which I thought was freaking brilliant, because that's one thing that I wish I had was loads of footage from those old days, you know what I mean? But
it was one of the first things I bought with my publishing money. It was a Handycam, and was like, I'm going to document a lot of the stuff, but there was so much stuff missing. Honestly, one tour, Holly G bought her Handycam, and she filmed so much stuff, and she's like, it's in a box somewhere at my dad's down in Dorset in the UK. Like, I don't even know if it's still salvageable, because a lot of that stuff, by the time I pulled those tapes into digital format, they were degrading, a lot of them.
Yep.
So I'm thankful that I did it when I did it, because fuck man, they've only been under the bed for 15 years, but they degrade quite quickly. So if you've got old VCR footage, get it digitally transferred for sure.
So let's jump forward a few years now. You're on your way back to New Zealand. You and I reconnected. You told me a story earlier about that I'd kind of forgotten about, but it was also very special as well.
Yeah, it was funny because I was sitting on a plane reading a magazine, and I remember reading an article about you. And in the magazine, you were saying that you'd had to leave music for a bit. You'd had your son, you had to go away and work on fishing boats. It was really hard. It was really depressing for you, and that you had anxiety and depression from it. And I remember just thinking, this is crazy. This is like a vulnerability and a openness that I'd never ever experienced with you. The Jay I knew had always been very hard and had this front, it was very cool kind of thing. And to sort of read your story and how you felt, and especially because there was a moment in the UK for a good 2 or 3 years there where I suffered really badly from depression and social anxiety, and so to read that, it was like, wow. So I just got straight on Facebook and I sent you a message and was like, hey bro, I just read this article. I just want to say that I think it's really beautiful that you shared that side of yourself. I've experienced it too. I'm back in New Zealand and looking forward to connecting with you. And you hit me straight back. And when I landed, and was like,
I know, because I was shocked. I just did not expect to hear from you. Like, after all these years, it was just so out of the blue. But then, like, it's just such a very similar story, and I was like, you know what, I think this is an affliction that really creative people who are really dedicated to their crafts, and I think it's kind of part and parcel with being this way, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember I came to New Zealand, and there was drum and bass wasn't very big back then. It was really like lots of drum. Well, there was drum and bass, but it was quite sort of jump up and neuro kind of stuff, which is not really my cup of tea. And there was heaps of dubstep. Dubstep had really taken off at this stage. This is sort of like around 2010, 2011, 2012 era. And lots of pop electronica kind of stuff. George FM was like pumping that stuff out like there was no tomorrow. And I kind of got in with the George crew via Dan Ox recognising me in a cafe and coming over to talk to me and say, hey, welcome back to New Zealand. And I remember going to La Di Da Festival, the first one, and I was asked to host the stage there. And I got that job because I looked online at what summer festivals there were in New Zealand, and I freaking hustled and I emailed everyone. I managed to get a set at Rhythm and Alps emceeing with LTJ Bookham through Alex, my friend who promotes Rhythm and Alps, and also through La Di Da. The promoter was like, look, I don't really know who you are, but yep, you can come and host the stage kind of thing. So I was doing this shithouse job where I was having to like host for like 5 hours on the La Di Da stage. It was pouring with rain. We were knee deep in mud. It was just not a good time. It was freezing in Martinborough there. And but I remember that I walked up on stage and there was like MC Bo, the Upbeats, Trey, Truth, all of these guys that I'd never met. I'd actually done a tune with Trey because he'd hit me up when he found out I was moving back to New Zealand and said, do you want to do a tune to kind of like herald your return, which we did. And then when I came to the La Di Da Festival, there's this like beautiful, beautiful open-armed greeting by all of these dudes to me who were kind of like all hail the Queen kind of shit. I was like, whoa, this is so nice. Like I remember Jeremy Upbeats being like, hey, are you MC Tali? I'm Jeremy from the Upbeats. I'm a massive fan. I used to have a poster of you on my wall. And Trey being like, I'm Trey. We did the tune together, and these guys are so lovely. To this day, they're some of my bestest friends. And they welcome me with open arms, and I started MCing with them and playing gigs with them and obviously reconnecting with my Shapeshifter boys and with Tiki, Tane and people like yourself, So I really had to start again.
It's one of the things I love about New Zealand drum and bass is that all of us producers, the MCs, the people behind the scenes, we're all friends. Like, I don't know about the new era. I don't really, because I stopped producing drum and bass as a career like 10 years ago, but I've still like always had my fingers in the pies and always been interested in what's going down in the scene and everything like that. I don't know how the kids are today, and I don't know if there's any sort of like early bickering that we were mentioning earlier on in our careers these days.
Yeah, there is between promoters for sure.
Between promoters, but I don't think that goes into the DJ /
no, I think a lot of the DJs
producer
these
categories.
days. The thing is, people have agents these days. People have agents and managers and labels looking after them. Like when we started out, we didn't have fucking anybody. No one told us how to behave or how to perform or how to be or how to do these gigs. We had to find all that shit out for ourselves, and we made a lot of mistakes, and people did a lot of dumb shit and people were assholes. But nowadays, I think especially with the rise of social media and the fact that, like you were saying before, people document their every single day, you kind of can't be an asshole. You'll be called out. And so we've got agents protecting us as well and managers saying things like, don't do that, maybe don't post that, like think about that. And it can work in some ways, and in other ways it means that everybody's very nicey and doesn't want to tread on anyone's toes. And then you've got these like sort of bitching and moaning going on behind the scenes because people don't really want to say out loud what they think. But also I do feel like the scene is very harmonious, like I wouldn't say that I would say I love maybe like 30% of the drum and bass that's coming through New Zealand at the moment. That's a very small amount.
This is also a big conversation on this podcast as well. Like I had that conversation with Tiki and I've had the conversation with State of Mind. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not feeling. There's a lot of stuff that's being produced over here at the moment that I'm not feeling. It's just not my cup of tea. It doesn't mean I don't love it and respect it as an art form, but
all
it's
those
just
people. It doesn't mean you don't
all
respect
those people. Exactly. I mean, in fact,
Yeah.
the people who are making tunes that I don't like are some of my dearest friends who I've helped come through. You know what I mean? But I just don't like that kind of music. You would know what kind of, I'm like the Rollers. I like the early sounding Eurofunk from 2008 to 2000, and then I like certain sort of offshoots of drum and bass.
I love most of the music that I love is still very much UK based, the liquid D&B and tech rollers, and now that I've started producing drum and bass as well, I did have like a crisis last year when I started making it, because I was like, I'm going to make nice deep, drum and bass tracks, liquid drum and bass tracks, but no, it turns out that I kind of like tech rollers, and then I was like, who's going to play this in New Zealand? George FM isn't going to play this. Like, they're not going to put it on the radio. There's no DJs over here who are going to play this. It's such a UK sound. So, but then I was like, fuck it, this is who I am. I don't have anything to prove. This is where I'm at in my journey. I'm just going to make this music and see what happens.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm doing now.
Cue Love and Migration, your album. I'm just going to play something here for the listeners out there, which to me, easily one of the most monumental moments in New Zealand drum and bass, not just because you won an award, but it's because of what you said. Take a listen to this.
And of course, thank you to all the fans. Before I go, I just want to say, I'm obviously very proud to represent New Zealand drum and bass, but after all these years, I'm still pretty much the only female up here doing this. And I really want other aspiring young female producers, DJs and MCs out there to know that there is a place for you in this scene. This music is one of our country's biggest successful international exports, and people love our music even if half the time you don't even know that you're hearing it. Well, let me tell you, the All Blacks run out on the stage to a drum and bass, run out on the field to a drum and bass song. Vodafone uses drum and bass to sell mobile phone deals, and every major festival in this country has a drum and bass act headlining. Our music is conscious, poignant, uplifting, intelligent, and a downright good time. And if you like the sound of that, maybe go home tonight, look us up, have a listen. And all my ladies out there who are keen, come and join us, sister. There is a place for you here, and that goes for my female-identifying, trans and non-binary peeps as well. I am dedicating this award to all my drum and bass soldiers out there. I am proud to be your First Lady, and to all of the New Zealand musicians and artists in this room, oh my God, I am so blessed and so grateful to be a part of a rich and colourful industry, and now, history. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you.
And there you have it. That, to me, easily one of the most powerful moments in New Zealand drum and bass. You won an award, finally recognised by an industry that is so freaking small and so freaking difficult to navigate and break into, as well as, you know, not really having the radio support that you would think you would get, having, you know, songs on that album and collaborations and everything like that. But there you are, you're still up on stage accepting a music award, and not only that, but inspiring a whole generation of young wahine who may or may not be interested in drum and bass, or just may or may not just have the courage to sort of step out of their shells. And, you know, I wish the scene had more LGBTQ plus contributors, you know, people who are from all backgrounds, making the music, emceeing over the music, running record labels. I think the scene would be 1,000 times more vibrant if we did. But just the fact that you acknowledge those people, to me, was really fucking special, mate.
Well, I mean, I'm a massive supporter of the rainbow community. I have family and very good friends who are part of the rainbow community, so of course I will always acknowledge them, but also acknowledging, you know, Black, Indigenous people of colour too, because at the end of the day, my whole industry is built on those people who came before me. And so I have to acknowledge the people who came before me and the people who have paved the way so people like I could come through, other women as well, you know. But that's why I was like, you know, this might be the only music award I ever win, and I'm going to take this the advantage of this moment, and particularly because I knew it was being aired on TV. I'd already said to the director, I was like, you better air the Electronic Music Award on TV because you guys never do. And I kind of had a little go at him, and he was like, don't worry, it's going to be shown. So I was like, you know, to my parents who couldn't come, unfortunately, I was like, make sure that you can watch it. So I was like, you know, this is a moment where I am going to take it and I'm going to run with it. And thankfully they didn't cut me off. They let me spiel on longer than anybody else. And say my piece, because I'm not just representing women, I'm also representing all of Aotearoa drum and bass, you know, like people look up to me, and so there's an expectation. Yeah.
Some of my favourite parts in that is that they cut to the Prime Minister twice in that little segment, and she's just sitting there. She's got the biggest grin on her face. She's like, "You you go, girl. You freaking go, girl. That's awesome,
Jacinda is an acknowledged fan of my music. She also starred.
She's an acknowledged fan of drum and bass. You know, she loves it all. So,
but she even said at breakfast I was at breakfast with her the other day in a group of friends, and she said to Sam from Shapeshifter, she goes, "Well, you know, Sam, I was actually a fan of Tali before I was a fan of Shapeshifter," and I said, "Well, I better give you a Tali CD then, so you can give that to the next royal person who visits," which cracked her up. But Jacinda also starred in my Powerful music video featuring Mellowdowns. She was one of the wahine who starred in that music video. So there's your proof that she was a fan anyway, long before she was even leader of the Labour Party. But
we're incredibly lucky to have a leader like her, especially during these times. Fuck me days. Speaking of leaders, mate, because you've mentioned before, people nowadays have got managers. People have got agents, right. This is a realm that you're moving into, isn't it?
Well, yeah, just very tentatively, and only because I really feel like I have connected with this person. So I'm managing a young vocalist by the name of Ellipsa, who's come through, and it was actually our mutual friend Greysound who put me onto her. Grace sent me an email and said, "Look, there's this girl kind of coming through who's doing tunes with people, and I feel like she needs some guidance and direction. She's really talented. She reminds me a lot of you." I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm not really looking to be anyone's manager, but I can mentor. Like I do a lot of music mentoring through the New Zealand Music Commission anyway, and for various other organisations like Mains and SAT and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, I can do the mentoring thing. So this girl turns up on my. Oh no! First of all, I sent her an email, saying hi, and then her email back was so exuberant and positive and enthusiastic. I was like, okay, I need to meet this girl in person. So she turns up on my doorstep, and when I opened the door, just her vibe, I was like, I kind of was taken aback because she reminded me of myself. I was like, I can the energy that she had and the enthusiasm and the ambition that was literally leaking out of her pores. I was like, that must have been what it was like when Ronnie met me, like just you can't put that aside. That's someone that you feel obliged to take on. So she comes into my house, we start having this meeting, and I said to her, I'll mentor you. But it very quickly became a very strong connection. I could see she did need quite a bit of guidance just in terms of some of the decisions she was making. Talent-wise, bags of it, not really need any help there at all. More just getting her connections, overseas connections, things like that. So yeah, she was like, you should just manage me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to manage you. So I now manage Ellipsa, but she's the only person I kind of manage at the moment because I've got so much going on my own stuff. But eventually management is probably something that I will maybe get into later on down the line. I don't know, but if I meet the right people. But in saying that, my Instagram DMs are always open, and I have so many young women hit me up and say, give me advice. Can I do a one-on-one session with you? Often, they're paid sessions. Sometimes I'll give a little bit of advice just there online for them. I've had people like Colette Warren from the UK who I've mentored and helped bring through. I did a Zoom with Ruth Royal just the other day, who's another fantastic singer coming through in the UK drum and bass scene, just wanting advice, just wanting guidance. And I guess maybe I'm good at that. I don't have kids of my own, but I'm drum and bass mummy to lots of people.
Yeah, well, does it make you feel some kind of way knowing that these girls would have heard your music when they were young, and now everyone's moved on and they're kind of coming through and they're looking at you as that benchmark?
It does make me feel a kind of way. It does. It makes me feel like, this is how it makes me feel, right? On those days, like a couple of weeks ago, where I just wanted to give up. I was so angry and put out by the way I'd been treated regarding a lineup, a poster lineup that came out.
Yep, I saw you posting about this.
I didn't outrightly say who the person was or the promoter or the gig or anything like that, because I'm not going to name names, but I was so upset because even now after 20 years in this industry now it's been, and 18 years as a professional recording artist, I am still not considered to be on the same platform as the very people I came through with, Shapeshifter, the Upbeats, to Kitane. I'm still considered a second tier artist.
It's just flat out wrong. Like, for promoters to be doing that still, like, you know, it always irked me as well because I'm friends with quite a few UK MCs who have all come out here and all that sort of shit. Like we've all, you know, toured around the world together and shit, and you would always see their names in smaller fucking writing, and it's like, well, they're literally traveling just as far, they're doing just as much mahi to be here, you know what I mean? Why aren't they getting the same amount? And like so many MCs are irked by this. It's not just female MCs either, it's MCs in general.
But I'm not just an MC. I'm like an
I know,
artist. With a full
you're an artist.
live
It's a
band.
different thing. You know what I mean?
Award-winning, 7 albums, 11-piece drum and bass band. You know, like I'm not mainstream. Sure, I don't sell thousands of tickets and I don't play stadiums. Okay, I'm not LAB in that sense. But to say that I'm not on the same par as like the Upbeats or even Shapies is really wrong because I sell out the shows that I play in my venues. They may not be thousands and thousands of people, but they still sell out. I sell out shows when I play in the UK, you know, like, and it's not even about selling out. It's where's the respect? Where's the fucking respect? That's what it comes down to.
It's 2021. Read the fucking room, promoters. That's
Read
what
the
I'm gonna say
room,
about
but
that.
it's not just the promoters; it's the agents as well who have a big responsibility here because they're the ones who are calling up and berating the promoters and bullying them, and blackmailing them in a way into putting their artists up top, and that means the rest of us get shunted. And so, you know, respect to the promoters, they have a hard time, but from my own personal sense of self, it's like, what more do I have to do, guys? You know, like one day am I going to make it into that top tier when I'm like, you know, I'm in my 40s now, Jay. So it's like, how much longer do I need to wait? But anyway, my point is, my point of this rant is that those young women that I'm inspiring and those young women that are coming through and those messages that they send me on those days when I'm feeling like, fuck this industry, I've had enough, I want to give up, I will get messages come through that remind, you know, like Harriet Jackson messaging me going, please don't give up, you are my idol. Katie Coven being like, you were my inspiration for singing in drum and bass. These chicks are out there on the world stage absolutely smashing it and they look up to me, you know, like that's why I do it. And that's why I keep being outspoken and I don't quit because I would be letting down so many people. And, you know, and sometimes you do have to do things just for yourself, but other times you have to recognize that what you're doing is not just about yourself, it's about the industry, it's about the scene, it's about the future, you know. And Aroha, DJ Aroha, our good friend Aroha, who
shout out to our dear sister.
Yeah, who I
legend.
MC with and who I would be so lost without. She says to me, do you think it'll be crazy when we're like 70 and we look back and all these amazing wahine women and trans and non-binary people have come through and we were their inspiration? She's like, how fucking crazy is that? That's going to be amazing.
Right. Well, it's not even, you don't even have to be trans or part of the rainbow community to be inspired by you two. I've told you this time and time again. When I see you and Ra on stage together, it's one of the most powerful fucking scenes because it's just,
Thanks,
A,
mate.
I know you both so well, and B, it's just two of my fucking best mates doing what they love on stage and an entire fucking sea of people moving to them, to their sound, to their beat. And it's just something that I can't even put it into words properly. There's no adequate superlatives to describe the way that you guys are on stage together. And even when you're on stage with the Upbeats or you and, here's another thing, you and Tiki at the town hall in Christchurch, we were talking about this the other day, and I've seen clips and all that sort of stuff, but just, I don't think there's adequate ways of describing the relationships you have with people, especially when you've gone through so much together. And then here you are in your hometown at the town hall with the symphony orchestra performing
best
songs
mate.
together. With your best mate performing songs
was
together.
beautiful.
It's scenes, mate. It's absolute scenes.
It was great. And you know, like I've always said that, you know, people might criticize me for being ambitious or self-serving or self-publicizing or whatever it is that fucking people want to say about me, but no one can ever say that I'm not a nice person. And yes, I'm an introvert and I have trouble interacting with people. Sometimes small talk I find very difficult. It's anxiety inducing, but I speak out about that. I'm not shy about saying this is who I am. So that way when people do see me in the club, they have a bit more of an understanding about how to communicate with me maybe. And I want to leave a legacy of music, but I want to leave a legacy of people saying she was professional or she was kind or she inspired me.
She normalized mental health in music. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah, for sure.
we all talk about our, well, no, we don't. We don't all talk about our downtimes and like, you know, you sharing the fact that 2 weeks ago you felt like giving up. You know what I mean? Whereas having those things bottled up is just so bad for you, and it's so bad for the creativity side of things of being an artist. But then, you know, just having little mediums like this just to sort of mention it on it, it kind of gives people reassurance that they're not going through things alone. You know, like we are all out here. Fuck, I still suffered depression, anxiety, but I have coping mechanisms, and these are the things that you learn as you get older as well, and especially when you have support around you with people who are like-minded. You know, so
Yeah.
if you are out there and you're listening and you do struggle with mental health and you are a creative and times seem bad, trust me, it gets easier.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. We're all here with you. Trust me, especially now in level 4 around Aotearoa. And yeah, Tali, mate, I've taken up so much of your freaking time already. You are one of my favorite human beings of all time. You are literally the first lady of drum and bass in Aotearoa and the first lady of drum and bass emceeing anywhere in the world. And
Thank you, bro.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing with.
It's such a pleasure to chat to you. You're a great interviewer and you're so knowledgeable and very eloquent, and you know, you're a good mate. So thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
I swear a lot, but you know, we'll get there.
So do I, bro. So you take the girl out of Taranaki, but you can't take Taranaki out of the girl.
Exactly.
I'm coastal.
I'm actually going to have you back on again once we're out of all this lockdown season, and I'm going to have you and hubby together talking about your experiences and you know, that whole scene that you guys are building together, that liquid scene, the liquid lowdown. Fucking awesome. I'm so glad that there's, you know, little factions that are happening of drum and bass and Aotearoa that are really sort of taking off, and the musicality's back. Thank you very much.
No worries, bro. All right, well, you take care, and shout out to everyone out there tuned in to the podcast. Thanks for listening to us ramble.
You've been listening to the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass series. For episode schedules and podcast information, follow us at NZDMB Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, with new episodes weekly on all major podcasting platforms. This is the History of New Zealand Drum and Bass.